Good morning, everyone. There we go. Now it looks like it's working. How is everybody this lovely morning? Um, so thank you for joining me on my Facebook Live. As always, please feel free to ask questions in the comments and I will answer throughout the live. So just ask away. If you are listening to the recording, I do regularly check back and answer questions. So again, feel free to ask. For those of you on the call, say hello. Let me know where you're from, what kind of dog you have. Tell me your favorite thing about your dog. Um, while we give people a couple minutes to join us, I want to talk about something that came up this week. As you know, as some of you know, I have a 5-month-old border collie named Wicca. By the way, if you want to see some of our puppy training, we have a Facebook group called Raising Your Puppy in a Pandemic that has a bunch of free training videos for you to look at. I will put the link later on in the notes. So the first step of working with me is deciding what you want from a dog. That's always the first thing I ask. What do you really want? Sounds like a really easy request, and people are always like, well, I want a well-behaved dog. The hard part here is, what does that look like for you and your family and your dog? The rules are different if you own a Shih Tzu as opposed to if you own a German Shepherd. So your rules aren't necessarily even the same for all your dogs. You may have different rules for different dogs. Um, Everyday life will affect how your dog behaves. So you need to always be kind of paying attention, going, oh, my dog's doing that. That's going to bite me in the butt in the long run. I need to stop that. Um, it's been really interesting for me. I've allowed Wicca to get away with stuff that I haven't allowed other dogs. I'm usually really big on training nice, calm behaviors in my house, especially when I have company, because I really want dogs that can be loose and interacting with the company. And I know they're polite, they're not jumping, they're not biting, they're not taking food out of people's hands, all that stuff. So I usually do a pilot management. But like happens, life is different now than it was before. For example, I have a 12-year-old son now. So old enough that he isn't getting knocked over, old enough that he loves to lie on the floor and get jumped on by the dog. And it looks like a lot of fun. So up to now, I have allowed it. But like I said, my goal with first and foremost with my dogs is to have great family pets that I can take anywhere and go anywhere with and have confidence that they're going to behave the way I expect them to. Um, so I've realized that the behaviors I'm allowing my son and Wicca to do together are going to start affecting her manners because she's getting more and more cranked up when there's company in my house. And of course, too, because of COVID, there has been very little company in my house. So I haven't really had to work on this as much as previously I have. Um, right now, Wicca thinks that all little boys should be jumped on and wrestled with. This is what she practices on a regular basis because, like I said, I have had her out in public and she's really good on leash. It's off leash in the house that she's starting to get worse and worse and worse. Um, so the behaviors I'm allowing with my son, and even my husband allows, he doesn't allow her to jump on him, but if he's sitting in a chair, he allows her to climb up him, which again starts to get into that gray area. And this is what I mean. This question of how you want your dog to behave is not easy and not black and white. You really have to sit down and give it some thought, because owning a dog, there's some things that you and your dog do together that builds value for your life, makes you happy. Like my dog loves the fact that every morning Wicca goes up and when he's working at his desk and puts her paws on him and they have a hug and they have a cuddle. So I can eliminate that behavior, but that'll take away some of his enjoyment of owning this dog. So you're always counterbalancing enjoyment to future enjoyment. Now she's starting, so the jumping's getting worse. I had really worked on it and it had gotten much better, but now she's getting worse. And what I don't want is a dog who approaches people and launches when he's 5 feet away. I want a dog who calmly approaches and either sits or stands, but lets itself be petted without jumping. Um, and again, this is where you really have to think about what exactly you want. I always tell my clients, my job is not to tell you what's you should do and you shouldn't do. My job is to give you the pros and cons of your choices, and then you can make an informed decision on what you're going to allow. Now I'm looking at deciding, and you can change your mind, which I just am doing right now. You can decide, now I'm deciding what these guidelines are going to look for my family. So I want my son and Wicca's relationship to keep growing, but I'm going to have to put some rules that are going to tone her down a little bit. We had company this week for 5 days. My sister and her husband and my nephew, who is 9 years old. So yet another little boy for Wicca to play with. My nephew isn't so happy about her climbing on him and scratching him, which she does. It's like owning a cat. Last night, Wicca was running around the kitchen with three of them sitting on the couch, and it was ridiculous. She was jumping on their heads. She was doing fly ball turns, banking off their chest. She was getting crazier and crazier. And I let it happen, but afterwards I thought about it and went, I hated that. I never want that to happen again. So, but interesting enough, the day before it allowed the same thing, and she hadn't gone anywhere near as excited. Could have been time of day, could have been she'd done it once. She's getting more and more excited. And again, she looks like she's having fun, but then am I having fun? If this was, so for you got to think about, would this behavior be okay with kids that weren't so dog savvy? For example, when my nieces come over, I guarantee you they would hate this. And they would cry because she scratches them. Would this behavior be okay if it was my in-laws sitting on the couch? And I guarantee you, absolutely not. I don't want a dog that has to be put away whenever I have company. So this behavior has to change. Tonight, I have a plan. And it's something Wicca already knows. My dogs understand how to sit quietly next to my chair when I have company. I have a leash on. I stand on their leash, and they get rewarded for lying quietly. I use it out in public. When we go places, I use it when I have company. It's just a way to manage the dogs so they start to understand, oh, when there's company, I can just hang out. And that's what my adults' dogs do. When company comes in, they say hello, and then they go find their spots and lie down, which is what I picture as my perfect ideal adult dog. So that's what I want you guys thinking about is, are you allowing stuff at some times that you then are yelling at your dog or hating at other times? Consistency. We always go back to that consistency. Does anybody have any questions about that? Is there anything they want to share? What's going on with your dogs that you're like, I really hate this, but I only hate it sometimes? For example, when you're dressed to go to work, you don't want your dog jumping on you. But when you're wearing track pants and a t-shirt and you're hanging out at home, you're perfectly fine with jumping on you. Okay, no questions. I'll keep going. So back to the topic for today. How to get your dog to make the right choices. Why is this important? Every day we make choices, the dogs make choices. What happens with those choices is what predicts the next behavior. So that is how the dog learns. When you're teaching a dog a new behavior, you want to minimize the choices so the dog can be successful and you get the opportunity to reward the right choice. For example, let's say a sit. You want to teach a sit or any behavior in a quiet, calm environment, an environment where your dog can focus on you and be successful. But this is where I see most clients stop. They never go past this point of training. Yes, your dog is great at sitting when you pull out the cookie in the kitchen, but can he sit next to the squirrel tree? Can he sit with your kids running around the backyard? That is what makes those cues powerful. Having a dog that can just sit in the kitchen is great. Don't get me wrong. That's wonderful. It is a great beginning, but it is not your goal. This is where, and then what I see happening is you go from sitting in the kitchen to trying to sit when your dog is lunging at the cat in the tree. And this is where it all falls apart. This is where you have to set your dog up to be successful. In dog training, this is called proofing. Ask your dog to perform an action they know, but changing the environment to make it harder. Let me give you an example. In your kitchen, your dog can sit when you ask, ideally the first time. So you go ahead and reward that. Now take his food bowl and put it on the floor. At first, I start with an empty food bowl and the dog is on leash, so he can't go check out the food bowl every 2 minutes. Put it across the kitchen where your dog sees you put you can have someone else put the food bowl down. Your dog knows the food bowl is there, but is far enough away. Hold your dog by the collar so he cannot go to the food bowl or by the leash, and now ask your dog to sit. don't change the cue. Do not get louder. Do not get harsher. Do not pull up on the collar. Just ask your dog to sit exactly how you did before. Um, we were just talking about this last night in class. Don't change your cue. If I say sit, I expect my dog to sit. When he doesn't sit, changing your cue isn't going to teach him to sit. It's just going to change it. Like, and by changing the cue, I mean, if you get louder. So now you've taught your dog, oh, you only sit when I'm loud. No, I want my dog to say, hey, Fido, sit. I need it to be out of conversation. So if I'm talking to you and I say sit, I don't expect my dog to sit. But if I look at them and ask them to sit, I do in a calm voice. I shouldn't have to yell or get firm or put social pressure. I should just be able to say sit. So that is the only cue I work with. If your dog can do it, awesome. Reward. So your dog, you have your dog's hand in his collar, the cookie or the food bowls across the kitchen. You say sit, your dog's going, no problem. I can do this. Awesome. So if your dog can't do it, move your dog further away from the food bowl and ask for the sit again. Can he still not do it? Move him out of the kitchen. Can he ask for a sit? Okay, move it again, ask for a sit. Keep moving him further and further away till his brain reconnects and goes, oh, sit, I know how to do this. Awesome. You can reward him and then you can release him and say, go check out the food bowl. Eventually, I put food in that bowl so they understand working with me is what gets that food. So what do you think? Do you understand what I mean by this? Can your dog sit in your kitchen but has a hard time sitting when there's people in the house, or there's kids running around the backyard, or there's a squirrel in the squirrel tree? Okay, so this is proofing. And this is the step, like I was saying earlier, that most people miss. I get calls all the time. Oh, my puppy is so smart. He can sit down and come when called when he's 10 weeks old. And that is awesome. But we have to realize to have these behaviors in the kitchen is amazing, but they are not trained, nowhere near trained and ready to handle real world situations. My puppy is my puppy is 5 months old, and every day I am pushing her ability to listen to me and use her body when there's a distraction. Every challenge, everything you have a hard time with, every distraction is a chance to create a better cue, a stronger cue. I'm going to take a minute to answer a question. Jen, so can your dog, how did you teach the stay? And can your dog stay without distractions? So answer me that, and I'll keep talking, and I'll get back to you when you answer. You have to always take into consideration what the dog wants. For example, with a shy dog, I don't put a lot of rules with people greeting. They are confident, so they are not confident. I'm trying to build their confidence. So I want them to engage their curiosity, and I want them to check people out and things. I will even reward them for moving towards strangers if it's a dog who's hesitant and really hangs back. For a confident, friendly dog like the average lab puppy or my border collie puppy, I do the complete opposite. I play control games near people and constantly manage their world so they learn to want to work with me and not want to say hello to people more than they want to work with me. So that means I practice the sit game. For example, the game I play with friendly puppies is an approach and sit. Start about 15 feet away from the person. Your dog should be able to pay attention to you without luring. That means you shouldn't have to show them the cookie to get the behavior. You should be far enough away that you can call your dog's name. Your dog looks at you and you're like, sit. Perfect. If your dog is unable to do this, go back to the Facebook Live we did on July 2nd, which is our ODR game, Observe, Don't React, and start there or move further away till they can. If you walked straight up to a person with your dog who's overly excited, your dog will almost guaranteed pull forward and jump on the person, which is exactly what you don't want. Instead, you're going to work on sit. Take one step, ask for a sit, and reward multiple times. That's how I start to build my stay. When your dog's calm sitting, I'm going to say my release words, which could be okay or break, and I'm going to take one more step, and I'm going to ask for a sit, and I'm going to reward multiple times, and I'm going to do this all the way up to the new person. This gives my dog the opportunity to stay connected with me while I approach the new person. Um, if you approached right away, like I was saying earlier, it would be too hard and he wouldn't be able to do it. This way, he's sitting every few steps and going, okay, I can do this. Okay, I can do this. You are also teaching your dog to listen to you when he's near new people. And you can finish this by telling the dog, go see. And that is the final big reward. What your dog wants more than anything is if you have that type of dog. Last night I was out in public with Wicca and somebody asked me, can I feed your dog a treat? You know what? It all depends on the dog. This whole giving other people's dogs food, I'm not huge fond. If I've got my shy dog, um, I don't like people giving him cookies because I find people lean in and go into a space, which is going to make him back up. But I do reward my dog for approaching people if I'm working a shy dog. If I've got a super friendly, loves everyone, the last thing I need to do is build more value for strangers. So I don't let people feed my dog. I'll let them pet her because I will, but then I'm standing on the leash so she can't jump and I totally watching her. She may hit a fear period where all of a sudden she's like, ooh, spooky. So then I'm going to remove her from the situation. Right now, she's like, oh, I love everybody. So yeah, we practice the sit game. We practice standing on the leash when people approach her. So she's constantly being reinforced for sitting by the people petting her and not for jumping. Jen, she is pretty strong-willed and will often choose not to listen. She is treat motivated, but not food motivated. She will do a lot for a treat, but if I don't have a treat, she ignores. You have so many things I'd like to address in this comment. She is strong-willed and will often choose not to listen. Without a doubt, there are more drivey dogs, which is what I'm assuming you mean by strong-willed. Dogs that will work a whole lot harder to get what they want. And there are less drivey dogs. And but I'm going to caution you with, if she chooses not to listen, that tells me you are putting her in situations that are above her ability to handle. For example, yesterday we were holding my dog's collar and throwing out a toy, and I asked her to sit, and you could see her ears flickered. She tried to listen to me, but she couldn't get her attention off the toy. I did ask her a couple of times, and after on the third time, she was like, okay, I can do it. But we were right on the edge of what her ability to do was. If she hadn't done it on the third try, I would have moved her away, done a bunch of sits away from the toy, and then I would have gone and done the exact same thing again and gone, do you remember now what a sit is? I could have also made it easier by putting the toy further away or bringing the dog further away. It's up to us to train our dogs. So if your dog's choosing not to listen, that tells me you do not have enough money in that bank account. And yes, it's up to us to train our dogs to listen. If your dog's choosing, then you don't want to put your dog in a situation over and over where she's going, okay, when there's a squirrel in the tree, I choose not to listen to you. When there's a squirrel in the tree, I choose not to listen to you. Now, eventually what happens is when there's a squirrel in the tree, the habit is they don't listen. You want to instead go, okay, what if we're 100 feet from the tree? Can you listen here? Awesome. Just like the people sit game, I would start 100 feet away. Can you sit? Great. Reward, reward, reward. Okay, take a few steps, sit, reward, 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 all the way up to the squirrel tree. And now she's creating the habit of near the squirrel tree, I listen. So you're taking away the choices, making the choices easier so she chooses what you would like. I'm not quite sure I understand she is treat motivated, but not food motivated. Without a doubt, the value of the reward you are using is going to impact your dog's willingness to work for that reward. If I'm working something challenging, I'm going to have high value. High value, I had a dog. Usually I use this more with fearful dogs, but I had a dog who wouldn't take treats in class. It was too exciting, too nerve-wracking, too stressful. I used raw chicken. She would take raw chicken. I had to use it for like 2 weeks. And then she was like, okay, now I can take treats because I created the habit of being rewarded in class. So if she only works for you when you have treats, then I'm going to say to you, are you using the treat to get the behavior, which is more a lure, or are you getting the behavior and then rewarding? Okay, So Jen, I'm going to read your question. We have been working on sitting to get us to throw the ball instead of lunging for the ball. Okay, how I work that exercise. I ask my dog to sit and I put the ball down on the ground. Can she do that? So that would be my first thing. Sometimes I ask the dog to sit on one side and I put the ball on the ground on the other side, because that way it's really easy for me to pick up the ball if she goes. So that's my first question. I'm going to ask you to sit. And when you're calm, when I put the ball down, I'm going to tell you to get it. Then I'm going to put the ball in front of me. Then I'm going to put the ball in front of you. Once you can do that, I'm going to start again on the other side of me, but this time I'm going to drop the ball 3 inches, because I don't know, somehow when you drop it 3 inches instead of placing it and the ball moves, it's 10 times as hard. So that's how I would build up the behavior you're asking. But if you're holding her back and throwing the ball and she's lunging for the ball, you are actually creating more drive for the ball, not less. Okay, back to our talk. Okay, lastly, I want to talk about the art of how to set up the proper challenges. Like we just talked about with Jen's questions, we have a hard time setting up challenges that are easy enough for our dogs to be successful. You want to have a lot of success and some failure. Let's go back to my extended family sitting on the couch. Wicca loves people, and this was a great opportunity to practice strengthening her understanding of when I call you, you come, no matter what. So Wicca was sitting on the couch getting loves and pets from everybody. I walked over and rewarded her. That was setting myself up for success. Human beings love to set ourselves up for failure. And then they say, and I do it too, no judgment here. Then they say, look, my dog doesn't come when called. See, it's the dog's fault. I knew the odds were slim that Wicca would come when called. Definitely our recall has been a thing we've been working on since she came home at 8 weeks. And I'm still changing stuff around to improve the recall. It's good. It's not great. It's not where I want it to be. So walking up and giving her a treat was building value for me approaching. So when I approach, when you are having a good time, I reward you and I leave. So pretty soon what was happening, this is advanced collar grab game. I want my dog, no matter what they're doing, when I approach them in the perfect world, they start moving towards me instead of going the other way. So I did this a few times, and then I saw as soon as I stepped in towards her, she was looking at me and starting to turn away from whoever was petting her, which is exactly what I was trying to build. This time when I approached and she looked at me, I rewarded her by doing stage 1 of name game, which is I said the name, I took a step back, and I rewarded. Wicca nailed it, got rewarded, and then right away I gave her a release to go see. Releases are so powerful. We tend to tell our dogs, no, no, no. We never tell them, yep, that's it. I use a lot of food in training. I use a lot of toys in training, but you also got to remember what things your dog loves. Swimming, going to see people, going to get a ball. Those are all rewards, and you can use them to teach amazing control behaviors. Within 4 repetitions, I could call her from anywhere in the kitchen. And you're like, yeah, you started with food. It's easy. But I still created the habit of coming off people giving her attention and coming to me no matter where I was in the kitchen. If I do this every day for the 5 days they're here, she will start. I don't have to start at the beginning. I can start halfway through the process and every day start further up the process till in a week from now, she can be sitting on the couch. I'll call and she'll be like, I'm there. That is a great way to teach your dog to come when called. And eventually when she was playing on the couch, she would constantly be checking on me as I walked around. This is how she made the choices. I didn't force it, but I created the scenario so her choices were exactly what I wanted. Well-placed planned challenges will always grow your dog's skill and confidence. Well-planned is important. Otherwise, you just end up frustrating your dog, which, Jen, I think is what's happening with the ball. I'm going to take a minute and answer Jen's question. Okay, she does care about her food bowl, but if I have treats she loves and would do almost everything, probably using as a lure, not as a reward. Thank you for the distinction. It is so hard to not fall into that trap of showing the food to get a behavior. And if you watch some of my other Facebook lives and training videos with my puppy, I do use lures. I'm not saying I never use lures, but you have to be aware of what the sight of the food is rewarding. So you want to be aware of what you're rewarding when you use a lure. For example, my collar grab game, you grab the collar, you show your dog your cookie, and you lure them towards you. The sight of the cookie is the reward for allowing me to grab the collar. So yes, I'm using a lure to get them to come in, but the reward is for grabbing the collar. Now, if my dog is looking at the squirrel tree and I'm going, sit, 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 my dog's like, I'm busy. And then I show her the cookie and get her to sit. What she was doing before she saw the cookie was lunging at the squirrel tree. So what you're actually rewarding is lunging at the squirrel tree. Does that make sense? Because the sight of the cookie is almost as valuable as the actual cookie. Okay, there's another question from Jeanette, and I'm going to answer that. My 4-month-old BC is terrified of cars. He is okay outside until he hears or sees a car. When he sees one, he goes crazy trying to get into the house. If I try to get him to stay, he starts oh, poor baby, flip-flopping around. Jeanette, I'm going to suggest you watch my Facebook Lives about fear and leash reactivity fear, which were the last 2 weeks. So what I would do with him is go somewhere where the cars are at least 100, 200 feet away. Not knowing your house, maybe on the side of your house where you can almost be to the backyard. Have a hold of his collar and have super incredible treats. This is where I might use raw meat, or frozen meatballs work amazing. So you cut them up big enough that you can handle them easily, because you don't want to be dropping treats because you're trying to get them to him. As soon as you hear a car and your hand is in his collar, you start feeding him meatballs. The whole time he hears the car. As soon as the car's sound is gone, you stop. Do this maybe 3-4 cars and then go inside. Repeat this every day and you will find eventually he's going to start hearing the car and being like, wait, there's a meatball coming. Like you'll see, he'll feel the car or hear the car and look that way. And then all of a sudden his head's going to start going, wait, there's a meatball. So give that a try. Let me know how it goes. But this is the beginning of the Get It game, which I have a free handout if you look at my Facebook Live on frustration from 3 weeks ago. Okay, back to the talk. Talking about planning. Well planned is very important. Otherwise, you just end up frustrating your dog and you. This is where you have to listen to your dog. Your dog is going to tell you what you need to make the next step. Take the information your dog is giving you and change the plan accordingly. We get so stuck with should. Be careful of the word should. Don't get me wrong. Some failure is important. If you never fail, you're not moving along. Learning to embrace failure was a huge step in my evolution as a dog trainer and allowed me to accomplish so many things with my dogs. And I still catch myself staying in the safe zone of, oh, my dog sits, I give her a bunch of cookies, I say, okay, she's wonderful. And then I'll see something or I'll remember something and I'll be like, hey, what about if I do this? And there's a little bit of failure, but then all of a sudden I've gone leaps and bounds on how much better she gets. But we tend to go, and this is what I used to do, we tend to go from super easy to university challenges. It's building those little tiny challenges that gives you the success you're looking for. And also teaches your dog to work through failure. So when they make a mistake, they don't get higher or lower depending on your dog. They go, oh, that's not it. Okay, let me figure out what it is. And that is the working dog you want. That is the pet dog you want. And this is where dog training is an art. Too much failure is not helpful, but not enough failure doesn't let you progress. Learning theory says the magic number is 80%. 80% success, which means 20% failure. Some things are hard to track, but then some things like sits are easy to track. I've asked you to sit 10 times. You got it right 10 times. Well, that's too easy. If I'm actually training you to get better, I have to, let's say you're working the food bowl, bring the food bowl closer. This time when you put the food bowl down on the floor, remember the sit proof from earlier, you're going to get someone to drop a cookie in it and then ask your dog to sit. So your dog's thinking about that cookie and goes, oh, okay, I can sit. And as soon as they say, you know what, good boy, go get it. Whenever I am stuck on anything I am training and I'm not progressing, the first thing is I start to track my rate of reinforcement. If you're one of those wonderful people who love to journal and write stuff down, you should always track your rate of reinforcement. I try, but the best I can do is I tend to do it when I'm stuck. The general rule I use when I'm talking to my students is 2 mistakes make it easier. So if you've asked for a sit and your dog can't do it for whatever reason, you have to make the situation, the environment easier. And that way you can have success. And be careful of not getting stuck with my dog knows this mindset. Remember last week our Facebook Live was a mindset. This is a general rule you always have to remember. I do it all the time. Oh, but you should know this. You should come when called when there's a squirrel tree because I've worked this with you. Yeah, it doesn't matter. If your dog's not coming, then you need to work harder or more. My rule to myself is if I say should, I should smack myself in the head. Because that reminds me to stay aware of what the dog is telling me and not fall into my mindset. As soon as you say should, you are setting your expectations. Usually you think this because your dog isn't doing something that you think he should be. In this case, we tend to keep pushing, getting sterner or louder while the dog is telling us that for whatever reason, the situation, they are unable to comply. For example, crate training. I see this all the time. My clients tell me, oh, my dog goes into the crate when told. Then they proceed to stand at the door to the crate and tell their dog to go in the crate, and then show them, and then tell them again and again and again, and eventually show them the cookies and throw them in. So, and by this time, everybody's annoyed. And what the dog's learning is A, you have to show me cookies before I go in the crate. B, you're actually rewarding not going in the crate because what brings the cookies out is him choosing not to go in the crate. Instead, I take away a whole lot of those choices. I take my dog by the collar. And of course, I only do this with a dog who's comfortable with their collar, not a dog who is going to panic whenever I take their collar. With my puppies, I pick them up and put them in the crate. With an older dog, I take them right up to the crate and put them in at the beginning. And as soon as they walk into the crate, as soon as their head crosses the plane of the door, I throw cookies into the back of the crate. I lost my place. Sorry. When I'm doing this with unexperienced dogs, I have a leash on too, just in case I lose control of the dog. As the dog gets better, I start stopping them a little further away from the crate. Pretty soon, the dog is running into the crate and understands that means cookies. And how I start proofing this is Wicca goes in the crate all the time. She's a puppy. She spends a lot of time in there. But let's say I'm about to put her in the crate. My son walks into the room. I hold her collar. I put her near the crate door. And she goes, my son, the crate. My son, the crate. My son, the crate. She tries to move towards my son. I'm stopping her. I've got my hand in her collar. And then eventually she goes, what if I go in the crate? I can reward. I can even reward by saying, break and go see. So she can be rewarded by my son being in the room. Constantly using her reinforcement, whatever she wants, as a reward for doing what I want. So you're constantly building, moving the crate further and further, or moving the dog further and further away from the crate door, and rewarding for going in, not for not going in. Going back to making sure you are watching the dog and what they're telling you. The other day we were in the forest and I'd called Wicca 2 or 3 times already and she was coming back beautifully. And then I called her and she was almost about to turn. She'd started to turn and she got a sniff. And then I was like, hey, what are you doing? You're supposed to come when called. And I moved towards her to do a collar grab and she was acting a little weird. And it took me like 3 seconds to catch her collar. And then I was trying to do collar grab, but she was totally not working. And I kept doing it. And finally I was like, I don't know what's going on, but you're not acting normal. 2 minutes later, we kept walking. I had her on leash by this time because she wasn't coming when called. And I didn't yell at her or get mad, but I was totally like, what is going on? a grouse flew up from the bush. So she's 5 months old. She's definitely hit that spooky stage of things scare her. She might never have smelt a grouse before. So she was like, there's something strange up ahead. She could not come when called. She could not function. She could not think. I pushed harder than I probably should have, but I didn't correct her and I didn't do anything of that because she was telling me she couldn't do what I was asking. And expecting her to have done it is me not being respectful of my dog. So always think about what's going on, especially with your worried, fearful dogs, which they all are at some point. But you also have the other side of dogs that get overly excited when they're worried or fearful. And it's the same coin, just two different sides. Okay. Every day, your dog makes hundreds of choices. Some are hopefully going to be something you want repeated, and some are going to be things you definitely don't want repeated. How you control and manage those choices will give you a well-behaved pet that is easy to live with, or possibly a terror that makes you question your choice in dog ownership. Hopefully, this talk has given you some ideas of how you can manage your dog to help them make correct choices and lead you to create that easy to live with dog. If you can't come up with a plan to change your dog's behavior, contact me and let's have a chat. See if you're a right fit for one of our training programs. We do both remote and local outdoor training. Before I sign off, any last questions? Let me check. Okay, guys, have a wonderful weekend. It's going to be gorgeous here. And I will be back next Friday at 10 a.m. with another Facebook Live. Bye for now.